ready to get started. You can come from the cheap seats right up here to the front. Hopefully all of you have a copy of this evening's program, which was booked through Creative Artists, a very important agency. First, let me welcome all of you who have joined us this evening to pay tribute to Lou. Friend, colleague, mentor, internationally renowned copyright expert, drinking companion, lunch partner, cigar aficionado, master storyteller, court jester, movie buff, avid reader. These are just some of the extraordinary human and intellectual qualities that endeared him to each of us, and for so many of us, in more ways than one. As you can see from your program, there's an outstanding evening of entertainment. I say that, that's okay. In many ways, this reflects on Lou's incredible varied interests and on our deep and abiding affection for him. For those of you who might have heard the background music, the selections were from two of Lou's favorites, The Grateful Dead being the child of the 60s, and the history of the Chicago blues. And now we're going to turn to the program, and we're going to begin this evening's entertainment with Ian Grant, which itself is a very funny concept.
Francis, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honour and a privilege to be able to say a few words about my very dear friend and colleague Lou. Although I say colleague, I must admit most of our limited time together was spent socialising, surrounded by alcohol and laughter. The former normally being dispensed by me, and the latter usually being created by Lou. He was truly one of the funniest men I've ever met. On the limited occasions we attended business-related meetings, it was the anticipation of Lou's next aside that held my attention and in truth kept me awake. Directors' meetings will never be the same. But it was in the canteen that I will most fondly remember him. He was a stalwart member of our Thank God It's Friday Club. If there was fun in the air, Lou would enter into the spirit of things wholeheartedly. At one of our Scottish tribal evenings, to celebrate the birthday of our national poet, Robert Burns, he was the first in line to get a St Andrew's saltire painted across his rather wide centre parting. Lou was truly New York's answer to Braveheart. He was in his element, concocting and mixing cocktails, guaranteed to destroy the brain cells. Lou was knowledgeable about many things. Indeed, on his first visit to Edinburgh with Nick, Mike and myself for a sporting weekend, he located the best stocked malt whisky shop in the Lowlands within 20 minutes of landing. As you would expect, that weekend proved most eventful, but our visit to watch my favourite football team, Hibernian, was truly memorable. The team were languishing at the bottom of the Premier League and were in considerable financial peril. so it was not too difficult to secure tickets for the director's box. Lou arrived with no tie and jeans, which contravened the hitherto strictly enforced dress code. However, a rumour was quickly spread that a rich American was coming with a view to investing in the club, and open sesame, in he went. Despite knowing zip all about soccer, Lou, Churchillian cigar in hand, carried the roll to a tee. You will all have your own private memories of Lou, but I'm sure humour will feature consistently. I will remember him as a true friend who treated each and everyone in an equal manner, regardless of creed, origin, or position. He made many of us struggle and embarrassment when he presumed we shared his elevated intellectual plane. He was a true master of expression. I would like to close now with the final verse of a poem by another master of expression, Robert Burns. A man's a man for all that. The words encapsulate for me the concepts of universality and equality to which Lou subscribed. Let us pray that come it may, as come it will for all that sense and worth o'er all the earth shall bear the gree and all that. For all that and all that, it's coming yet for all that man to man, the world over, shall brothers be for all that. Lou, rest in peace, and thanks, pal, for making me laugh.
Truthfully, how many people understood a word of what that guy said? Francis Moore, of course, yeah. Adrian Strain, can we call upon your communication skills to...
Well, I thought this would be harder to write than any press release, but actually it turned out to be very easy, and I think that's a tribute to Lou. My friend leaned intently over the Brussels bar table. Be witty, say clever things. He'll like you if you do that. I was going to meet Lou Flacks for the first time. I wanted a job at IFPI European office, and I was going to meet Francis Moore, Lou Flacks, Nick Garnett, and Stefan Kravchik for an informal lunch near the Commission. How do you prepare for lunch with someone billed as a cross between Woody Allen and Oscar Wilde, and who is a renowned international copyright lawyer to boot? Well, I tried. I practiced witty aphorisms the night before, crafted impressive-sounding phrases delivered quickly but with tremendous gravitas. That will impress him, I thought. That'll get him going. That will unleash the stories for which the IFPI's Director of Legal Affairs was so legendary. And that, I thought, will help me get the job. Well, of course, it wasn't to be. The lunch came and went. I tried, probably too hard to keep my end going. With Francis, Nick and Stefan, we took on the usual Brussels issues, from Eurostar to the EU's policy on China. My rehearsed funnies never made it into the open. Flacks, the famed raconteur, storyteller, and verbal performer, never opened his mouth. No questions, no crafty remarks, silence, and an awkward one at that. It seemed strange then, but now, looking back, that was of course classic Lou Flacks. A man who rarely followed the script, who would sparkle at the grey times, yet who seemed sometimes oddly grey when you thought he would sparkle. I didn't know Lou very well, not as well as many of his colleagues, but I found him a mercurial, magnetic personality. Lou made you laugh. Not like a court minstrel, he was far too gloomy for that, but like someone who relished rich, human, intelligent humour between individuals. The size of the audience was irrelevant. It could just be one person. I have seen deeply serious colleagues buckled with laughter in front of their computer screens as they read the latest finely spun prose from Lou on their email. Lou was funny and he made other people feel funny. Others I've spoken to here at IFPI felt the same way. We all have our own Lou Flacks lines. For some reason I can't remember the best ones, but there are many better than the one I'm going to tell. It was when we were approaching the torrid climax of the WIPO negotiations in Geneva in December 1996. Lou's work was at its most profound, negotiating over treaty language that would shape conditions for the music industry for years and decades to follow. He had been on and off in Geneva for more than a month. He'd walked every paving stone of the town, knew every inch of the lobby of the Intercontinental Hotel. He'd seen all the movies on TV, and he'd done the restaurant menu from up top to bottom. It was a tense and tired Lou whom I met on the escalator at the Geneva negotiating building to ask if he might just do a very quick interview with a US journalist. Lou was appalled. An interview? We're in the middle of the negotiations. He puffed angrily through his pipe. You can tell that journalist, he went on, that I would rather set fire to my own penis. Lou made me feel good. He gave a great deal of time to his colleagues' work, sometimes writing pages and pages of comments on a simple press release or position paper. And for me, that was a terrific compliment. Lou loved ideas, talking about them, playing with them. He loathed oversimplification, disliked the reductionism of lobbying and media summaries. He shunned the culture of having to reduce a page of 600 words to a paragraph of 50, even though, paradoxically, he could, if pushed, reduce the most complex of ideas to a visionary simplicity. Lou could be tetchy and critical. If asked whether he respected an opposing view, even if he disagreed with it, he might reply, "Respect? Sorry, I don't do respect." He once harangued my job when we were together in a taxi. "You know, all you're doing is selling a product. Yesterday it might have been shoes, tomorrow it may be second-hand cars, today it just happens to be copyright." That was not malice. It was a grudging respect, and perhaps tinged with a bit of jealousy. Jealousy for his own passions, be it copyright, movies, or Jewish humour, which he feared could be trivialised in hands other than his own. Many others will have better reflections on Lou than I. I only knew him 4 years, but when I came to London, he made me feel very welcome and offered his hospitality. I had the habit of meeting him by accident in the kitchen, just at the wrong time, when he would launch into a full-length Flacks special, just at the moment when I had a deadline to meet or a call to make. My last kitchen chat with him was just as Joe DiMaggio, America's baseball legend, was defying his own cancer last year. Lou then was in quiet, reflective mood, just like that time when I first met him in Brussels 4 years before. I miss him, and there are others who at IFPI, some real friends who miss him much more. "Be witty, be funny, he'll like you if you do that," said my friend before that lunch. It didn't work that day, but I feel a better and funnier person for having known him.
Thank you, Adrian. The next speaker is Terence O'Neill-Joyce of New Zealand, who's come quite a long way. And Terence?
He once touched the shores of Aotearoa. Lou did. Te Māori ora, Kirana, Ni Sambula, Talofa, Tēnā koutou, Tēnā koutou, Tēnā koutou. Te Māori ora. His spirit lives. It's here, now. When I was asked, suggested, prompted that I might put together a poem about Lou, I found a blank slate. And I really wanted to say something. I wanted to pay tribute to this man who had touched me. And just recently we had the delightful company of Olivia and the delightful company of Paul in New Zealand and in Wellington. When we sat down for the first lunch, and there was a fresh Antipodean wine just poured into a glass, and as I reached out to pick the glass up, I suddenly remembered Lou. And I raised the glass, and I said to Olivia, and I said to Paul, to Lou. And then I began to realize how much Lou Flacks had touched me. And these images came back. So let me fix a time and place. An oblong room, lobbyists from the capital. Jason, sans the fleece, adorned with baseball hat. Jack Valenti, with circled arms, remonstrating. A lady in the park, living in cellophane, demonstrating. Washington. We went out that night. This is getting pretty grim, Lou. Are we okay? Relax, stay with me. I know the way. A smoke-filled room in Washington on the darker side of town. Betty Carter, Michelle Johnston. Jazz and blues and Côte d'Aron. A fine red wine, a grape to match the night, and fractured light that neon splayed upon the rain-slicked streets. We left for the hotel where Lincoln slept in the early hours as dawn was pushing on. Cans, sunlight through the mimosa and gathered flags, well-fashioned brogues carefully polished the promenade. La Croisette, engaged in conversation, legally setting up more important paragraphs to be inserted, protective mechanisms. Lou's forte. He stops, looks up, doesn't miss a beat. Terence, thanks for the Fumé Blanc. Cooper's Creek, oak cask, excellent. Paul gave it to me recently. Adam Baki Bahok. A lunch in London, the High Command. 4 headlines, Talmud script. Furrowed, intent, eyebrows bushed, quivering, bristling, jaw jutting out. The wine list spread. A push of air from determined lips, then a decision made precisely. The Bordeaux, 89, if you please. Accent on the if. Panel discussions in Brussels and elsewhere. The brief with brief approach, laconic, taciturn, succinct, shoulders hunched with years of discipline. He never said it, not to me, but you could feel it considerably, at the forefront, just a millimetre behind the eyes. Look, if you've nothing to add, then shut up. Go quietly, and he did. No goodbye, just a message passed on by friends. Olivia, Paul, and I took the opportunity. First opportunity in world parentheses. The brackets that fuse you and I from the Antipodes to here as recently as August. Just as he was. Just. We raised a glass. A new world wine. A Sauvignon. This is Macon. Crisp, clean and dancing with the light. Wellington, Te Whanganui Atara, the Bay of Chiefs. We proposed a toast to Lou, precisely. Tehei Mariora.
I'm going to ask him later what all those things were. I have a few tributes to Lou that have been sent in, and I was asked actually to read them. The first is from Ralph Oman, who was the Register of Copyrights while Lou's last years at the Copyright Office. And this is a letter from Ralph accompanying his remarks. Dear Jay, I hope you make a transcript or recording or a videotape of the proceedings so that all of his absent friends and admirers can participate vicariously and share the memories of a terrific lawyer and a funny guy. It would also be nice to have a permanent record so Paul can know when he's old enough to appreciate it that his father was a very special man. And what Ralph has written actually will appear in the Journal of the Copyright Society. Remembering Lou Flacks by Ralph Oman. Excuse me. Lou was the perfect colleague, smart, funny, and bluff. A much sought-after dinner companion, he always had the best jokes, the hottest news, the latest photographs of his beloved son, Paul. He died in London on July 23rd, 1999, leaving all of us saddened and diminished. Lou greatly enriched our world of copyright and provided the raw intellectual muscle that helped transform the United States from copyright hermit to leader of the international copyright community. He had a distinguished career in the U.S. Copyright Office before moving to London in 1993 to head the legal office of the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry. Lewis was a New Yorker, graduated in 1964 from one of the greatest institutions of higher learning in the United States, the intensely intellectual City College of New York, which I might add, I shared that experience with Lou. His career in the Copyright Office spanned almost 3 decades and 4 or 5 registers, depending upon how you count. He began his tenure in 1967 when he joined the office as an attorney in the examining division upon graduation from Georgetown Law School. Over the years, he was promoted to positions with progressively greater responsibility, including International Copyright Officer and Policy Planning Advisor to the Register of Copyrights. Throughout his career, Lewis made a unique and highly individualistic contribution to the substantive and procedural programs of the Copyright Office and the Library of Congress. Whenever an assignment called for imaginative thinking, the call went to Lou. He brought a breadth of erudition, a brilliance of mind, and a depth of judgment to his speaking and writing that made him completely persuasive, unfailingly perceptive, and incredibly amusing. He was truly sui generis, and memories of his mental powers, humanized by his sense of humor, will serve as his legacy for years to come. And it goes on and on and on, talking about Lou's incredible achievements as a copyright lawyer. And it ends with, in his years with the IFPI, he continued to make his mark on international copyright, and his interventions at the business meetings of the World Intellectual Property Organization drew praise for the pithiness and scholarship. As a measure of his stature, when he took the microphone in that great sunlit hall overlooking Lake Geneva, all 4 he has become very important to me. Not only have I learned a tremendous amount from him concerning copyright, but Lewis as a person was unique. This, of course, refers to his deep humanity, but also to his originality, which constituted a permanent intellectual challenge to his friends and colleagues. I will never forget our conversations, jumping about from WIPO treaty implementation to early Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, from copyright to works of the author, to the foot massage dialogue from Pulp Fiction. It's little. Equally unforgettable is a conversation in a taxi in Brussels to the airport, meandering between the possible future of collective licensing and Disney cartoons. Michael Eisner. To me, the common element of these and all the many other discussions was the totally equal treatment of every element. A discussion about literature or the origins of consciousness in the breakdown of the bicameral mind was no mere decoration of a legal problem, but an expression of his intellectual focus, in which these things were closely and inseparably associated with each other. I have never met Lewis's wife and son. If appropriate, please express my warm feelings and deep regret. And now, back to your program and the beginning of the real entertainment part of our evening. First, a duet by Brigitte Lindner and Elizabeth Isles, accompanied by Richard Owens. They were colleagues, friends. Lou was mentor to them. It's hard to express what is represented in this performance. So, please. The next performance is by Richard, who comes to us at the end of a whirlwind world tour from Geneva and other places, who will play a selection. Thank you. Lou was a Renaissance guy. He could appreciate that, but he could appreciate some other things as well. And now for your listening pleasure, we have a number of acts, all-star performers from across Europe who've agreed to play this evening despite their own hectic touring schedules. And so I ask you to welcome first the noted guitarist David Sweeney, who is going to be performing a blues song. Is that? You want to say a few words too? Good. No, it's okay.
Thanks, Jay. Another noted quality of Lou's was that he could understand my accent, so hopefully everybody else can as well. It was great to work with Lou for 4 years at IFPI, and in fact tonight, like I'm sure a lot of other people here, I find myself going around the room expecting to find him, but unfortunately that's not the case. In IFPI, those of us that worked there experienced the Aladdin's cave that was Lou's office, where you would find, sure, plenty of legal texts from the ceiling to the floor, but you'd also find Cuban cigars, the collected goon show scripts, and also a giant inflatable chair, which Lou inflated himself. So when things got hectic at IFPI, I'd wander downstairs and into Lou's office with whatever legal problem was on the agenda at the time, and we'd go in and talk about the legal problem, about a lot of other things. One of the most recent things we talked about actually was, given the emergence of Irish bars all over London and far-flung places from London, indeed Moscow, there's the arena down there tonight, we would talk about the Irish bar to end Irish bars, and me being Irish, I would join in the conversation. We decided we'd call it the Troubles, and we had a menu that had things on it like the Adams Burger, which was full of hearty Irish beef, or indeed the Paisley Wings, which, sir, would be hot, medium, or hellfire and brimstone. So I would leave the office after an hour, half an hour, or whenever Mike rang down looking for me, and I would have the problem solved. I would also have a bottle of Aunt Sally's hot sauce under my arm and an offer to use the inflatable chair for the weekend. Anyway, we both shared a love of the blues. One of the last times I saw Lou, we sat down and tried to play a bit of blues together again, watched some video of Chicago experts at the trade. We often discussed if white men could sing the blues, or for that matter, if blue men could sing the whites. Anyway, as I think he would have wanted it, I've brought the guitar along tonight, and I'm going to sing an old Chicago blues song called Mean Old World by Walter Jacobs. So, thank you.
next performers are Arto and Nick, but before I ask them to come up here, I mentioned something. I said to Arto this afternoon at our meeting, I said, Arto, are you ready to play this evening? And he looked at me with a kind of quizzical look on his face and he said, I've been practicing since I'm 11 years old. I don't know about you, Nick, but that's pretty tough. So we have a duet by Arto and Nick, I Remember Clifford. Thank you, guys. As you may recall, in Ralph's note, he asked, said he hoped that we'd make a transcript or a recording or a videotape of the proceedings, and in fact, we are doing just that. And I received a call yesterday from Mary Beth Peters, the Register of Copyrights, who is hosting on September 24th a tribute to Lou at the Library of Congress. And what she wanted to do was to get a sense of what went on here, and I said I would send it to her, and in addition to which, we wanted Francis and Paul to have a record of this. Now, I had asked you to keep in mind the selections from Brigitte and Elizabeth and Richard, and I did so for a particular reason. One of Lou's favorite authors, not surprisingly, was the American humorist Robert Benchley. And because I know you don't want to hear me sing or play an instrument, I'm going to read to you a short passage, which it took me a long time to find, from Benchley's appropriately titled how to understand music, and you will remember exactly what it was like to hear Lou tell a story. How to Understand Music by Robert Benchley. With people having the very best music interpreted for them every Sunday afternoon over the radio by the very best experts, it will soon be so that we can't hear Turkey in the Straw without reading meaning into it. With so much attention being paid to leitmotifs and the inner significance of what the bassoons are saying, it would not be surprising if after a while we forgot to beat time. And if you don't beat time, what's music? I would like to take up this afternoon an analysis of Bach's Carry Me Back to Old Virginia, symphonic version by Tchaikovsky in C minor, one of the loveliest and at the same time one of the most difficult exercises for 3.5 fingers ever written. I may have to stop and lie down every few minutes during my interpretation. It is a very exacting exercise. You may do as you like while I'm lying down. In the first place, I must tell you that the modern works of Schoenberg, although considerably incomprehensible to the normal ear, that is, an ear which adheres rather closely to the head and looks like an ear, are in reality quite significant to those who are on the inside. This includes Schoenberg himself, his father, and a young man in whom he confides while dazed. What you think are random noises made by the musicians falling over forward on their instruments are what, when you understand them, really steps in a great moving story, the story of the traveling salesman who came to the farmhouse. If you have heard it, try to stop me. And the story goes something like this. We first have the introduction by the woodwinds, in which you will detect the approach of summer, the bassoons indicating the bursting buds. Summer and spring came together this year, almost before we were aware of it. And the brass carrying the idea of winter disappearing, defeated and ashamed, around the corner. Summer approaches, in those sections where you hear the tum-titty-tum-titty-tum, remember that? And then, taking one look around, decides that the whole thing is hardly worth the exercise, and goes back into a hole, a new and not entirely satisfactory union of the groundhog tradition with that of the equinox. This, however, ends the first movement, much to my relief and everyone else's. You will have noticed that during this depicting of the solstice, the wind section has been forming dark colors right and left, all typical of Tchaikovsky in his more woodwind moods. These dark colors, such as purple and green, and sometimes W and Y, are very lovely once they are recognized. The difficulty comes in recognizing them, especially with their beards on. The call of the clarinet, occurring at intervals during the first movement, is clearly the voice of summer saying, caboose, 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 to which the timpani reply, rumble, 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 and a very good reply it is. And this goes on and on and on in a fashion that was in fact very typical of Lou himself. And Benchley concludes, this in a way brings to a close our little analysis of whatever it was we were analyzing. If I have made music a little more difficult for you to like, if I have brought confusion into your ear and complexion into your taste, I shall be happy in that thought. The next time you hear a symphony, I trust that you will stop all this silly sitting back and taking it for what it's worth to your eardrums, to your emotions, and put on your thinking caps and try to figure out not just what the composer meant when he wrote it. Then perhaps you will write and tell the composer what it is he meant. In Ralph's note, he referred to the fact that Lou was a graduate of the City College of New York, spent a great deal of his professional life in Washington, and then came to London. And there's a special irony for me in the fact that I did all three of those things. I graduated from the City College of New York, I spent the greater part of my life in Washington, and I came to London. And I grew up in New York, as Lou did. I felt for over 20 years a very special affection for him, as did everyone who ever had a chance to share a joke or a meal with Lou. Francis? If you... This is a plaque in the design of our European Platinum Award for those people who have sold 1 million recordings in Europe. And it says appropriately, in memory of Lou Flacks, to honor the millions of wonderful moments he shared with us, presented by his loving colleagues, September 9th, 1999. And as Terence said, let's raise our glasses to Lou. Thank you all coming, and especially those of you who came from such great distances. Thank you.
Ha ha ha!